Hello and welcome to the Groom's course. Today we're going to look at winter tail cleaning. And at the barn this day it was 16 degrees. So right now I am putting together the initial tail rinse. So I rinse the tail prior to actually washing it to be able to get off as many of the nasty particles as possible. And it helps also mitigate staining on the tail as well. So we've got your hot water, your cold water, and then I've got a little bit of apple cider vinegar. I'm not going to measure. I'm just going to do like a one kerplunk in there and call it a day for that. I am only mixing in enough warm water or hot water so that my hands do not freeze off, and so that if I get the tip of the dock, it is not unreasonable for him. I don't want it super hot because if I do dunk his dock in there, then I don't want it to burn him. So I'm just swishing the tail around and making sure that as many of the kind of clumps that can form with dirt get undone and softened here. I'm not getting the entire dock wet, I'm just getting the bottom of it wet with the bottom of the tail. As you can see, the top of the tail's in better condition than the bottom, and of course the bottom is what, collects all of the dust and dirt and nasties. So this is just for maintenance, this is not for show. I'm not using any purple shampoo today, but this is something that you can do to maintain a light colored tail. After almost 20 years of having light colored tails, I have decided that maintaining cleanliness through the winter is essential. And with some of the barns that I've been at, and this is not a judgment towards them, but I have not had the luxury of having a available wash stall with hot water and all of that, and this is just showing that you don't need that. You don't need to have, and there's the bucket, but you don't need to have a huge area. This is just a stall that I've tied him up in. And so that is a block of ivory soap that I just put in there, so that's Dove. I would use any ivory soap. But I've got the hot water going, and I had some regular water in there so that it mixed up into warm water. And you want this as warm as possible so that your hands are comfortable, and hot water tends to kind of break up the dirt on the tail and kind of let it release better anyway. And here I am just working the bar of soap to make sure that the water is lightly soapy. I don't want it heavily soapy because I'm only going to do one rinse, but I just want it soapy enough that I can get a lot of that dirt off. So there it goes in, and I'm just going to swish it around like I did with the pre-rinse for the apple cider vinegar. Winter tail cleaning is also really good because if you keep your horse's tail in a tail bag all winter, it will tend to pull on the tail too much and likely pull some hairs out and maybe thin it out too much. And then of course you're looking at fake tails if you want to do any kind of big showing in the spring. But if you want to maintain a nice thick tail, generally I like to just turn them out without tail bags or anything. They are more comfortable, they can use their tail more naturally, and if you just keep it clean, then it will be way easier to do that show clean later on in the spring, and then maintain it through the summer. But here I'm almost done. Like I said before, I'm only doing the bottom and then the bottom dock area where stuff tends to collect, and I am wringing out the tail as much as possible into the bucket. I don't want it dripping, and I already know it's going to be pretty frozen within the next couple of seconds because, yep, it is 16 degrees. But I got a lot of dirt out with the first 2 rinses. This is going to be just a regular clarifying hot water rinse to get that soapy residue off of the tail. So that's just plain water. And I've been just doing the boiling water mostly because when I put that currently wet tail into the water, the currently wet tail is iced over by the time I get back to it after dumping that water outside. And that ice will cool down the water just enough so that it's nice and warm but not too hot. And there you have it. Nice rinsed tail. And here is what was left. So better, but I will move on from there. So I have these special microfiber absorber towels, and this is essential when you are trying to clean a tail during the winter because you want it to dry as fast as possible before it turns into ice crystals on the tail. So these absorber towels really get the job done and make it happen. And here I'm just trying to absorb as much excess water as possible because I'm going to be applying my favorite argan oil waterless shampoo in order to detangle the hairs. I don't like to detangle the tails, really detangle tails unless they have conditioner in them. And the waterless shampoo, and I'm literally adjusting this because I didn't realize this earlier, but it had frozen inside the spray nozzle, so I'm having a little bit of trouble getting that out. But anyway, yes, this is my favorite argan oil waterless shampoo, and it's got this nice argan oil in it, so it helps condition and make sure that the tail and hairs have all of the necessary chemicals on them, I guess, to be able to dry off quickly. So here I'm just spraying it onto the tail. I just wanted to get it just wet enough that I can detangle this. Now I am going to have to also put this back in the hot water because it did start freezing as I was detangling it with this argan oil waterless shampoo. And I just want to make sure that it's distributed as much as possible onto the tail, and then dried off as quickly as possible. So this also starts pulling out the remaining dirt from the tail. So you can see it's kind of getting a lighter color as it gets pulled off. And again, his tail isn't pure white on the bottom, it is more of a buttercream color. So you could see it was very dirty, but it is not going to be perfectly white because it's not supposed to be perfectly white. Here, and when we detangle the tail, we want to start from the bottom and make our way back up. Now it wasn't frozen at this time, but it did start freezing. You can see it starting to get stiff. And now instead of sticking together because it was tangled, it is because it was iced. So I'm putting it back into the warm water and then detangling it over the bucket while it is defrosted. Again, I wouldn't necessarily do this with a very thick tail. I might do this in sections in a thick tail, so braiding sections and then washing them in sections like that. And I wouldn't necessarily do this with a blacktail. This is just light colored tails that need regular maintenance through the winter to make sure that they don't have any crazy staining or deposits on it that will affect the color of the tail. It takes a little bit of extra work, but I think that it's worth it in my opinion. But I am using a normal bamboo comb. Yep, I gotta dunk it one more time. Using a normal bamboo comb. I like having a wide-toothed comb that has a little bit of give to it. So bamboo, plastic tends to have some give, but in my opinion it has a little bit, either too much give or not enough give, depending. But his tail is relatively, it's not thin, but it's not thick. So it is somewhat easy to detangle his tail in the winter. And again, if this was a thicker tail, I would section it off, braid the sections, unbraid the one that I'm working on, and then move from section to section, changing out my water as needed. And as you can see, since it's been a long time, like I do brush it, but since it's been a long time since I've actually really detangled it, you can see it's quite tangled. So now it is completely detangled. The hairs that you saw come out are not necessarily for me pulling them out, is mainly hairs that were caught in the dirty kind of locks that formed. So now I am drying this off as quickly as possible before it decides to freeze, because things freeze almost instantly. And I know I'm not necessarily dressed for 16-degree weather, but it is 16 degrees outside. Alright, so we have absorbed as much as much water as possible, and now I've got a second towel that's drier, and I'm going to continue to absorb as much excess water as possible out of this. And I haven't clipped the video because I do want to show you that truly you can get that tail as clean as possible, because you can see how once the water's coming out, it's lightening up nicely and starting to return to its original color. I am returning with a boar's hair brush. This is a brush that I got online, and it is for beards. It's the same, there it is. It's the same shape and size as the Biomane brush. I don't know if Biomane is boar's hair or not, but you can see, watch this, how it brushes out so nicely. And it's just almost automatically dry now. And I encourage the use of a brush because it redistributes oils on the hairs and really makes sure that everything is nice and conditioned. And you can see this is a nice conditioned and clean tail in the middle of winter, in the middle of 16 degrees. And it didn't take much. It didn't take a million rinses. And I didn't even need to use anything more than ivory soap and some waterless shampoo. And a little bit of ACV. And look how beautiful that is turning out to be. Alright, very, very nice tail. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something in this process. You can see that it is nice and dry and beautiful after this process, and it is ready to go to be used as a tail and not necessarily just you put into a tail bag and but I appreciate you guys, thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful time.